We're now on Daf Lamed Amud Beis, and we are quoting a pasuk in Mishlei to prove that a person has to know immediately how to answer a question in Torah. And Mar leChachma chosi at. Our relationship to Chachma Satorah, should be like a chosi. That just like a person is clear and he knows that this is his sister, of course he's not allowed to have relations with her, so too it's absolutely clear to him, it's absolutely engraved in his memory, the halacha, such that he can answer the question immediately without stuttering. The Omer, and we're going to have another pasuk. The Gemara is going to ask why we need another pasuk. And it says in a previous pasuk, Kosreim al etzbosecha kosreim al luach libecha, that the words of Torah should be so shogar beficha, such that it looks like the fingers on your hand, and it's engraved in your heart. Fi Omer, furthermore, pasuk in Tehillim, kechitzim b'yad gibar kain b'nei hanaurim. The Talmidim that a person teaches when they are young, they have to know with certain klarkite, with certain birur and shinun, to be able to answer any shoel, anyone who asks them a question. And that's like this gibar, this warrior, who sends out the chitim, he shoots out the arrows that are in his hand, and he defeats his enemies, and the arrows are very, very sharp. Fi Omer, furthermore, the pasuk says, with regard to shninus, with regard to chitzim, chitze gibar shinunim. So you see clearly that chitze is related to shinunim, mechudadim. Fi Omer, we have another pasuk there in Tehillim, chitzecha shinunim amim tachtecha yiplu. That when you send out the arrows, they should be so sharp that your enemies will fall to these arrows. Fi Omer, and furthermore, on these Talmidim, the pasuk says, Ashri hagever asher mile es ashpaso mehem lo yevoshu ki yedabru es oivim bashar. It means Ashrei, and the gever here is the Rav, the teacher, and mile es ashpaso, meaning he filled up his, they used to keep the arrows in a kind of a pouch that's called ashpaso. And what does it mean to, in a simile, what does it mean? What is it represented by the chitzim that have filled up this sack, so to speak? It means he has many, many talmidim. And amongst them, there are those who are sharp like the arrows. And therefore the pasuk says, "Lo mehem lo yivoshu." He'll never be embarrassed by these talmidim, because when they'll argue with anyone who opposes them, they have a certain ability based on their clarity of understanding the Torah to defeat any of their enemies in battle. What does the Torah mean in this pasuk in Tehillim when it says Es oivecha bashar Omer Abchia bar Filu ha'avu b'no Rav Talmido sholskim b'tor b'shar echad nasim oivim ze et ze. Even a father learning with his son, or a Rebbe learning with his Talmud, while they're being osek in Torah, they're fighting with each other. B'shar echad, they're in the same base medrash, and yet each one is raising an objection, a kash on the other. And the other one is refusing to accept the other one's view. They become oivin. They're like angry at each other, like enemies. But nevertheless, at the end of the day, after them alabing the sugya, then they become oavim zezeh. So it started on a bad foot, so to speak, and they were nasim oivim. Now they become nasim oavim zezeh, in the creative process of Torah study. Shenemar esvav b'sufa. Okay, now this is a pasuk that describes the miracles that were done to our forefathers on their way to Eretz Yisrael in Bamidbar Chaf Aleph. And specifically, this pasuk is referring to what we call Sefer Milchamas Hashem. And Al Tikri B'Sufa, which means Yamsuf, Ela B'Sofa, which means Sof, at the end. So at the end of this Milchama, which is over the Sefer, which means over the Torah, is there will be Ava, there'll be love between them. Torah Rabbanu, we learned in a price of Esamtem, it says in the Pasuk in Dvar Yud Alf, Esamtem es Dvarai Ele. And what's the meaning of the word Visamtem? Sima. A physical object, you could call Sima, you put it down on the table. But here we're talking about Divrei Torah. And the price of Darshans, Sam Tam. Tam means Shalem, Mushlam, perfect. And Sam is a dangerous toxin, a chemical substance. So what's going on over here? Is it a dangerous substance, or is it a cure that's being prescribed by the Rofen? Is Nimshal Torah Kisam Chaim? If you use the Torah properly, it becomes a drug of life that gives life. Mashal Adam Shehikas B'no Maka Gedola. Iniach Lo Retia. He puts a bandage over the wound of his son. As long as the bandage covers your injury, you can eat and drink anything. Anything that gives you a sense of pleasure. Even if, let's say, not the healthiest food. And you can take a shower, meaning the covering over your wound will protect any sort of infection from setting in when the water would seep in through this covering. And you don't have to be afraid that some extra damage will be caused to your makkah, because you have a protection, a retia that's protecting your makkah. But if you go ahead and you take off this retia, this bandage, is arei malanomi, then the makkah begins to get infected. Is kach. This is a mashal for how we deal with the Yetzer Hara. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Amar Lehem Yisrael B'ni. Barasi Yetzer Hara, Barasi Lo Torah Tava. Although I created and I challenged you with the alluring influence of the Yetzer Hara, but nevertheless I gave you a tavlin. That's the word I'm looking for. An antidote. And what is the antidote for this makkah of the Yetzer Hara? It's the study of Torah. And while, as long as you're learning Torah, you will not be given over to the control of the Yetzer Hara. And therefore, Tavili de Avera. So the Torah is protecting you that you shouldn't be nichshal. Shenemar, as it says in Bereshis Perek Dal, V'halo im teitiv se'es. What does it mean? If you'll rectify your actions and you'll study the Torah, then you'll overcome your Yetzer Hara. Without the protective shield of the Torah study, you are vulnerable to the Yetzer Hara, who's going to seduce you to sin. Shenemar, lepesach chatos rovetz. The Yetzer Hara is rovetz at the Pesach. He's waiting to try to be mach to you, to try to cause you to do chet v'lo od ela shekol maso maton ba. And all his ishtadlus is to be mach to you. Shenemar v'elet shukasa. It's his chuka and his taiva to be machshel you. The imata rotze, but you have the power Ata Moshe, where you can control the Yetzer Hara, overcome the Yetzer Hara. Shenemar v'ata timshol bo. Tana Rabbanan kosher Yetzer Hara shafilu yotzro kro ra. Even a Kodesh Baruch Hu, who created the Yetzer Hara, nevertheless he calls it evil. Shenemar ki Yetzer leiv ha'odam ra minu urav. Amar Rav Yitzchak Yisro shalom mischadish olav b'chol yom. Every day there's a new tachbula, a new attack, a new approach to attack you, to be machshir, to try to trip you up, a new mizima. Shenemar rak kol hayom. And we assume that this pasuk is referring to the Yetzer Hara, and every single day, the machshavos of the Yetzer Hara is only how can we bring him down? Keitzad lahara. So the pasuk says kol hayom to teach us that b'chol yom daito shel Yetzer Hara mischadeshes. My father used to say that sometimes the Pamalia, this whole group of Shadim and so forth that try to trip up men, one time they got together for a conference, and the question on the table was, how can we trip up the Jewish people? We're not succeeding. So one of the Shadim got up and he said, let's try to induce them that they should violate the Torah. And the other Shadim said, no, you're not going to succeed. They're dedicated to Torah study. So another Shade got up and he said, you know what? Let's tell them tomorrow they could fulfill the Torah. The day after, what's the rush? That's the biggest problem, the challenge of the Yetzer Hara. Procrastinate. It gets harder and harder, and it's stronger and so Miso tries to bring man down. The Rasha, which means the Yetzer Hara, is an Orev. He is a lying in the, in the bushes. I forgot my English translation of the word Orev. Ambush. Oh yeah, he's going to ambush you in order to bring you down. Also, without divine help and assistance, he cannot overcome the Yetzer Hara because it's getting stronger and stronger by the day. God will not allow the koch of the Yetzer Hara to get the best of you, and God will not leave man to his own to deal with and overcome the Yetzer Hara. So we need siyata d'shmaya. Tana debei Rabbi Yishmael b'ni im pagal lechaminu volzeh. If this Yetzer Hara gets the best of you and he wants to be machshel you, probably in some area related to the other gender, probably, is mashcheu lebeis hamedrash. Grab him into the beis hamedrash. And like we said before, the Torah is the tavlin against the Yetzer Hara, it's the antidote. And the Gemara explains how he's going to victoriously defeat the Yetzer Hara through the learning of Torah. Im Evan, who, if the Yetzer Hara is strong and powerful and tough like a stone, Nimach, the Torah will somehow kind of soften him up, like melt him down, just like water could melt down a stone, as we'll soon see later. V'im barzalhu, if the Yetzer Hara is as powerful as metal, is mispotates, through the Torah that you studied, he's going to be shattered into pieces. Shenemar, as it says in Yirmiyah Perikov Gimel, Halo, Kod Dvarai, Ke'esh, Nium Hashem, Ukepatish, Mifotzei Tzela. Im Evenu Nimoach, Shenemar, Hoi, Kol Tzomei L'chulumayim. V'yi Omer, and the Pasuk says, Avonim Shochaku Mayim. Meaning that the Avonim, that Shochaku Osamayim, that were attacked, so to speak, by water, the Torah, which is like water, and heavy called Tzomei L'chulumayim, which means the Divrei Torah, has the power Lishchok, Limchos es Yetzer Hara, Hamashaliyev. The Brisa says back on Daf Chav Tes that a man has to marry off his son. And how do we know this? Tichsiv, when there was a messenger who sent Yirmiyah to Am Yisrael with the following message. Kechu noshim v'olidu banim ubanos ukulu b'nechem noshim v'espanosechem tnu lanoshim. In other words, take wives for your sons, even if it means you'll have to settle down in Bavel. But we see from here that a father has to take a wife for his son. Bishlema b'no, I can understand that a father is obligated to marry off a son, meaning find a future daughter-in-law, is biyado. The father could seek out a woman because darko shalish lachzor acharish elabito biyadohi. Is it within the father's powers that he could marry off his daughter? She's going to want to marry the man that she wants to marry. Where it says Hachi Kamalahu, this is what the Navi Yirmiyah meant to say to Klal Yisrael. Nitain la midi uliyash ula vilavshaye v'nichse. A person should give nechasim to his daughter, and that will be a dowry. And levaishe means levush, give her a wardrobe. So when she looks beautiful in that wardrobe, and she has a little bit money for a dowry, people, men would want to marry. That's the obligation of the father. We learned in the Brisa Lamdo Umnis, a father has to teach a trade to his son Minol. And how do we know this? The Omakra, Omarchiski Omakra, Re'e, Oskin Keheles, which we'll read just in about, 2 weeks' time. No, 3 weeks' time. Re'e Chaim Isha Asher Ahavta Im Isha Mamishi. If you take this pasuk literally, it's referring to an Isha. Is kshem shechayv lasio isha kachayv l'lamdo umnus. V'im Torah hi kshem shechayv l'lamdo Torah kachayv l'lamdo umnus. So when we see the pasuk re'ei chaimim isha sharahavtu, we interpret as re'ei v'lamed umnus lis parnes v'lichios mimenu ima isha. So it's all a preparation for establishing a family. And the hekesh in the pasuk is umnus to an isha. And if you want to take the word isha literally in this context, is just like a father has to marry off his son, he has to marry off his daughter. And just like a father has to teach his son in umnus, he has to teach his daughter in umnus. No. That can't be right. Shem shechayv lasio isha kachayv l'lamdo umnus. Just like he has to marry off his son to a woman, so too he has to teach him umnus. In Torah, if the word isha here in this context is a remez to Torah, Shem shechayv l'lamdu Torah, kachayv l'lamdu umnus. Just like he has to teach Torah to his son, so too he has to teach umnus to his son. Yesh omer l'shito b'nor, he has to teach him how to swim. My taima chiyusehu. His life depends upon it. We learned in a Brisa Rabbi Yehuda Omer Kol she'ena malamdu umnus malamdu lissus chal kedaitach ella ki'ila malamdu lissus. My beinayu. What is the nafkamina between Rabbi Yehuda and the Tanakama? Even the Tanakama agrees that he has to teach his son umnus, and comes along Rabbi Yehuda and he adds swimming. The Tanakam and the Rabbi Yehuda having a machlokas in the following scenario. Agmare Iska. The father taught his son a parnasa. Mimishloach yad b'mischar. Buying and selling. So Tanakama holds that since he taught him a way of gaining an income through mischar, he fulfilled his obligation. And the chiddush here is, and we'll see why Rabbi Yehuda rejects this shita, is that a person who's involved in mischar, very often he doesn't find any merchandise. So he can't buy and sell. Nevertheless, we assume that he'll find some sort of an asek which will guarantee him kidei mechiyasa. So all that is according to Tanakam. However, Rabbi Yehuda holds that a father has to teach his son umnus. It's not enough that he teaches him mischar, how to buy and sell in the marketplace, because if he won't find merchandise, then he's going to go out there and be molastim as abrios. And the Mishnah says, "Kol mitzvahs aval aben echad anoshim v'echad noshim chayav mai." What is it referring to when it says "Kol mitzvahs aval aben"? Lema kol mitzvahs v'machayav aval lemevi leprei. The obligation of the father vis-a-vis his son, that can't be true because the women are exempt. Noshim chayavos v'asanya of chayav b'bno lamula v'liftoso. And why does it emphasize here of aviv in imolo? She's not obligated in the mitzvah of milah and pidyon. So the Gemara explains, Rabbi Yehuda achi kamar. This is what the Mishnah really has in mind, called mitzvah ha'av hamuteles ala ben lasos li'ovi. Not the obligation of the father vis-a-vis the son, but the obligation of the son vis-a-vis the father, like kibud and mora, is echad anoshim v'echad noshim chayav. So even the girls, the daughters, are obligated in the mitzvah of kibud and the mitzvah of mora. Tanya loha d'tan rabbanon. The Gemara now wants to bring a support to the brisa from our Mishnah. The Torah says, "Ish imo v'yov tiro." Ainly ella ish. A man is obligated in reverence vis-a-vis his father and his mother. Isha minayin. How do we know a woman, a daughter, is obligated in reverence to her parents? Kshu omer tiro. It says in Lashon tiro. Arekan shnayin. Im kain matalomar ish. So why did the Torah say ish, which implies that a woman is exempt? The answer is ish sipek biyad lasos. Isha sipek biyad lasos. Shem nature shusacher moleh. When she's married, she has a primary shibud to a baal and to a family. She has to raise a family and establish a household, and therefore she won't have the opportunity to be mekayim the mitzvahs of kibud and mora. Amar Idi bar Ovin Amara. Yeah, I remember. All right, for this, I have to shut this off for a second. There is no superior position to a father over a mother if they're divorced. As long as they're married, then she, the mother, is obligated in the covet to her husband. And therefore the father comes first. Torah Rabbanon, with regard to the mitzvah kibbud avayim, Nemar kabdis avich v'esimecha. V'nemar, and also we find a similar language vis-a-vis the Kodesh Baruch Hu, kabdis Hashem Yeoncha in Mishlei Perek Gimel. Yishva kosev kibbud avayim lekibbud amakom. The Torah is equating kibbud avayim and being machshav like kibbud amakom. So too, with regard to the father and the mother, Nemar, it says ish imo v'yov tiro. V'nemar es Hashem lekecha tiro v'yoso tava. Once again, Hishva kosim moras av ve'em moras amakom. Because in both cases, the Torah used the word mora vis-a-vis one's parents, reverence for parents, and mora for the sake of serving Hashem. Furthermore, with regard to of v'imo nemar mekalel of v'imo mos yumos, and again we have a parallel to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, nemar ish ki yakalel lokov v'nasa chetam. Ishvakosed birchas means a klola of ve'em lebirchas hamakom, as if he had chas v'sholom cursed God. Avol ba'akah, with regard to the Isra HaKah, the Torah says maka of v'imo mos yumos. Even though it's a very chomer dike Isur, Vadai Efsha, you can't equate that because there's no such thing as Hakah vis-a-vis HaKadosh Baruch Hu, b'chein b'din, sheshloshtem shutafim bo. And the reason why the Torah equates Kibud Amorav of ve'imo to Kibud Amorav HaKadosh Baruch Hu is because there were three shutfim, three partners in the creation of man. There are three partners in the creation of man. Kodesh Baruch Hu of ve'imo. Bisman shadam machavedes of ve'imo. Amar Kodesh Baruch Hu malini aleim keilu darti beineim v'chibduni. Kodesh Baruch Hu says, if you respect your parents, God says it's as if I'm going to consider as if I was living amongst you, together with your father and mother, and you gave me kavod. Tanya Rebbe Omer Gol v'yadulifnei mishamar v'yolom. It's absolutely clear to the Rebbeinu Shalom sheben mechavedes imo yosef of that a son has more of a natural tendency to give cover to his mother that he has a close relationship with than to his father. Mipnei shemetshad laso b'dvarim netaped daf lamed aleph is leficha chiktem HaKadosh Baruch Hu kibud av lekibud em. In the midst of kibud av comes first, kavedes avicha, and then it says v'simecha. So that man should not give superior energy to the mitzvah of kibud aim, which he naturally would. The Torah therefore puts av first. And in Morah, it's just the opposite. Torah is why does the Torah says ish imo? Imo first, and then aviv tiro, because a man has a natural tendency to give reverence and revere his father, who's also his teacher, that he has to his mother. Tani Tanakama de Rav Nachman, Bisman Shalom Mitzayers Aves Imar Kadosh Baruch Hu Yafa Asisi Shlo Dartu B'Neim Shel Moli Dartu B'Neim Tziaruni. God says it's a good thing that I didn't hang around here in this house, because a man who causes suffering and agony to his parents, chas v'sholom, God says, I don't want to be part of this. And this leads us to Amar Rav Yitzchak, which B'li Neder we are meant to learn tomorrow. And if, I know that your schedule is rough tomorrow, but if by any chance an opening comes up, you'll let me know.